So I was definitely interested, and I have Anabaptists, back in my family history, and then our kids went to a Mennonite preschool. So I definitely had a lot of interest in the Amish and the Mennonite. I took trips to Lancaster County and made my own contacts. And then one of my best friends left the Amish in her late 20s. So she'll brainstorm with me, and she reads all of my manuscripts, before they're published, which is just a huge help.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to a Writer's Day podcast. I know you have a choice as to which podcast you want to listen to, so I am honored that you've taken some time to listen to my podcast today, and I hope that you enjoy it. If you do, please consider leaving a review, follow me, and subscribe to my podcast so you can know what's coming next. And head over to artbyruth.com, my website, to learn more about me, my upcoming projects, and my artwork, because I'm also a professional artist. And I am a multi-published author in books for middle grade readers, YA, and adults in fiction and nonfiction. So head over to artbyruth.com and you will receive a free download of one of my short stories called The Support Group. It's more of a speculative, alien type story. I think you'll like it. It'll give you a sample of my writing style. And I'm hoping to develop it further into a full-blown novel coming soon. And when you sign up for my newsletter, I give away books every month, sometimes my books or sometimes books of other authors. So sign up today because you'll learn more about my upcoming project, Fatal Standoff, which releases June 24th. You can pre-order it right now. And I will give you opportunities to sign up for my book launch team, woohoo, where you can get some goodies from me as well as a free copy of the book. So head over to artbyruth.com today. Leslie Gould is here with me today. She is the best-selling author, award-winning author of over 50 books now, and she loves to research and travel and learn all things about Amish and church history and everything. And she and her husband live in Portland, Oregon, and she's here to talk about her new Amish book, Book One, In the Letters from Lancaster County, The Shop Down the Lane. And yes, it is about what you think it's about. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we listen to Leslie Gould talk about her new book. I'm super excited to be interviewing Leslie Gould today, and this is the first time we're meeting, so welcome.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your new book.
Okay. Well, I have been married for almost 42 years. I have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. My husband and I live in Portland, Oregon. And my first book was published in 2003. So far it's been 22 years of having from 1 to 4 books published each year. And my book that's coming out on May 6th, The Shop Down the Lane, is my 50th published book.
Wow,
so it's
50 books. That's admirable. Wow, that's fantastic. How did you get into writing, though? Was it something you've always wanted to do?
Yeah, it really was. I think from the time I was in the 6th grade, I wanted to be a writer. I'd always loved books, and my parents read to me and my older siblings. I was the youngest of 4 children, born in 5 years, so we were super close together, and they would read us books, and so I would kind of get in on books that were maybe a little more mature, than they would have read to me otherwise. So I remember being read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I think I was 5 or 6, and they edited it a little as they read. But I just love that story. And by the time I was 10, I'd read To Kill a Mockingbird. So I was kind of always reading above my age level. And I really comprehended the power of story and that gut punch that a really good story can give you. And I was really fascinated and enthralled by that. And then in the sixth grade, I had this brand new teacher, I think she was 22 or 23, and we started doing research. And I just thought that was the best thing ever. So I was a big fan of research from an early age. And so I graduated from college with a degree in communications, a double major, and one in history. I went on to become a museum curator in Ashland, Oregon. And about that time, I started just getting all these stories in my head. And uh, and so I'd write down like snippets and I had ideas for novels, but I really wouldn't complete anything. And then we moved up here to Portland, Oregon, and my husband was in the Army Reserve. And by that time I had two little ones. And my husband got called up to go to Germany during Desert Storm. And so all this time I knew I wanted to write, but it was like I was afraid to try because I thought if it didn't work out, if I failed, what dream would I have? And I had jobs in writing. I worked for the Port of Portland in communications. I was doing some freelance writing by then, but I really wanted to write fiction. So my husband went off to Germany for his service during Desert Storm. I had these two little ones at home. And I decided I'd take a class just to get out of the house. And instead of taking a writing class, I took a watercolor class. And so every Tuesday night, I'd go to my watercolor class, and the teacher would just kind of go on and on about the conflicts going on in the world. And I wasn't ignoring those at all. I just didn't want to focus them in my one night away each week.
Yeah.
And so after I took the watercolor class, which I was not very good at anyway, I thought I'm going to take a writing class. And I did. And I started writing short stories and I wrote short stories and started two different novels over the next 10 years. And I finally got up enough courage to send off one of the novels to Waterbrook. And they liked my story, but they didn't want to buy it. And they said, try us again. So I tried them a second time and they said the same thing. And then I tried them a third time and they gave me a contract. So that's how I got into writing novels.
Wow. So see, you didn't give up.
No, I didn't give up. Yeah,
That's
I kept
remarkable.
trying. And
And
I
did
had
you have,
oh no, well, I had a lot of support from my husband.
oh,
That really helped.
yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Did you have a teacher who influenced you when you were younger too, or was it just reading with your parents?
Yeah, I think I was reading with my parents. So I did have the sixth grade teacher. I had a couple just really incredible teachers in college. One who taught literature and writing, and another who taught history. So they both, inspired me just with their scholarship and their dedication, to research and to writing. So yeah.
That's,
But then other people, like I was part of a book group here in Portland, and I had read one of Jane Kirkpatrick's early books. And
ah,
she lives, at the time, lived a couple hours away. And I got her phone number and I just called her up and invited her to our book group. And she came. And she was, she's such a wonderful person. And
yes.
she was so encouraging. So, and then I won some short story contests, awards. And so I just like had enough encouragement over those 10 years to keep going. Plus, I had another baby, so I was pretty busy and I was doing freelance
Yeah,
writing, so yeah.
that's
So
wonderful.
yeah, so then by the time I was 41, I had my first book published.
So see,
So
listeners, it's not an overnight success.
right. I mean, it is for some people,
Yeah,
but
that's
hey,
true.
if it doesn't work that way, you're not alone.
Well, we have something in common. My husband served in Desert Storm as well.
Oh,
He
wow.
was in the Middle East though. He was in Bahrain. He was in the Marine Corps.
Oh,
So, but yeah, that's kind of when I started to think about being a writer too. We had, a lot of time on our hands back then, right? As wives
yeah.
back home,
Hmm.
and there was no internet or anything. So I'd spend hours at the library. And I started thinking, maybe I could be a writer. So I started reading books about writing. And so, yeah, as you were talking about that time, I thought, oh, I remember that time.
Isn't that something? Thank
Yeah.
you for your husband's service and your service.
Oh, thank you for
too.
yours too. And you were a
Yeah.
young mom, though. I remember there were a lot of young moms in our cul-de-sac on off-base housing.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking,
Yeah.
I'm glad we waited to have children. I don't think I could be handling this right now.
Oh, yeah.
So God bless you.
Well, my writing really has gotten me through some tough times. My husband went on to serve in Afghanistan in
Wow.
2011, 2012, and he was the commander of a field hospital.
Wow.
And I was writing my first Amish or novel about the Amish that I wrote on my own. I co-authored five before with Mindy Starnes Clark. But he was, just right on the front line. And I would Skype with him every morning. And then, which was amazing because
Mhm.
when he served before, we were never able to do anything like that. And then
Yeah.
I would just jump right into my writing day
Wow.
and just like just escape into Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, like the
Right.
exact opposite of where he was. And, I don't think it was avoidance. I think it was actually pretty healthy. I
Yeah,
think
it's
it
a
just
coping. Yeah, you were
Right.
coping.
Yeah. I mean, it gave me the just kind of the peace to deal with, our kids, our two youngest were still at home and then just to be able to like really listen to him and all that. So, yeah, writing serves all sorts of purposes.
It really does. It's very therapeutic. Well, let's talk about your new book, The Shop Down the Lane. Tell us about this amazing story.
Okay, well, this book is a little bit Pride and Prejudice and a little bit You've Got Mail with a little bit of The Shop Around the Corner, including that I was inspired by the title. Um, so this book has kind of a long history of stories behind it from, 1813 to I think You've Got Mail was released in 1998. So it was a lot of fun to kind of research the history of elements of the story through, a couple centuries. Um, and it has a second chances, enemies to lovers and anonymous pen pal tropes. So there's just a lot of fun things going on. So basically, I have two characters, main characters, Lois and Moses, and they went to school together. And then they considered courting. They started to court, and then both of their worlds blew up. And now it's 5 years later. He buys the shop where she's working. He wants to turn it into a tourist hub. She's appalled. And their animosity just kind of grows and grows. But in the meantime, they both join the same Amish circle letter. And then but they join with using pseudonyms because they don't want people in the community to know they're in this circle letter.
Okay.
And so the two start corresponding separately and privately, just between each other, having no idea who the other person really is. So they're falling in love on the page as the conflict between them in real life just keeps growing more and more and more.
Oh, that
So,
is so neat. Yes, definitely like the shop around the corner and you've got mail. That is wonderful.
yeah,
Now,
it was a lot of fun.
she takes up bird watching though. What made you want to put that in there in the
Yeah.
story?
Well, I've always been fascinated by birds. And,
Mhm.
as a writer, there's so many things that I think, oh, I want to do that someday. But I'd rather spend, every second I have writing or reading right now. So I find myself ending up researching a lot of things that I
Mhm.
really feel like I'd like to do, but I don't feel like I have enough time right now. So that was one reason. Another reason is just that the Amish bird a lot. They spend a lot of time outside. It's just a great, wholesome family activity. You can just pack everybody up, jump in the buggy and go off to a marsh or, some other, area, the river or whatever. So it's definitely something that Amish people do.
That's
And
neat.
yeah, and there's just a lot of symbolism in
Yeah.
birds too. I mean, scripture is full of references to birds, and just, comparing how God takes care of them to how he takes
Yes.
care of us. So that became very symbolic.
Okay.
And then for social birds, so, not for isolated birds or like predators, but for social birds, there's a lot of community. And, I just really thought about how birds work together with how the Amish work together and how much community that they have. So it really lent itself to the story.
That's brilliant because I have my office and I face my back patio with a couple of bird feeders and a birdhouse and a big tree. And so I'm just swept away by these birds. And I had the same feeling you did, thank you, Lord, for taking care of the little birds, using my bird bath to help out the little birds. I'm always saying that throughout my day because they're so
Oh,
cute. I just love them. But you're right. It just reminds you of the verses where Jesus said, if God takes care of these little sparrows, he's going to take care of you. So sometimes I just am so comforted by that. But you're right, they're
yeah.
very social, but they can be kind of snippy with each other too, I've noticed. It's like a whole Netflix series going on sometimes.
Yeah, lots of drama. There's definitely pecking orders that go on.
Yes, lots of drama.
Yeah. But if a predator does come along, little tiny
Mhm.
birds become so fierce, and so protective of other birds within their flock.
And it's funny because I'll be
So,
working and I'll hear them chirping, and then all of a sudden they start chirping like crazy. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, there must be a predator out there. So I'll go out there, and sure enough, there's a falcon sitting on a branch nearby,
oh,
and they all get together in the bougainvillea, and they're all just alerting everybody, And I shoo the falcon away, and then they stop chirping. They go back to being quiet
no,
again.
they're
So
calling for you.
they're like, help,
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
So,
I I had something like that happen that I incorporated into the book. I don't
oh,
I don't
good.
often like incorporate things from my experience, but I was working one day and we have a lot of crows in our neighborhood and they like our house because we used to have a cat that I would feed outside sometimes. So they just, they keep hanging around hoping for more cat food and they were just cawing and cawing and cawing. And finally I went out and there was a dead crow in the flower bed in the
Wow.
rockery. And, I went and got gloves and everything, and I picked it up, and they kept cawing and they followed me towards, our garbage can area. And once I disposed of the dead bird, they stopped cawing and they all flew away. But it,
Oh,
but it was like they were really communicating. And then I was really surprised that I felt like they really wanted me to take care of it. But
oh.
but I just feel like yeah, I just think birds are fascinating.
Me too.
So
And I think I loved that when I read that in your book description that she joins a birdwatcher circle. That is something I'd like to do someday too.
yeah,
They are
and
just amazing to watch.
right. Yeah. And what was cool for me, I'm no way am I a birder, but I did learn a lot. And besides, so the story set in Pennsylvania and Lancaster County and in Delaware. So, I had birding guides on both of those states and did so much research. But then, I was buying birding guides for Oregon and we
Mhm.
were going to the Bird Alliance here. And, I learned that the hummingbirds in our backyard are called Anna's hummingbirds, and I have a character in the story named Anna. So, that
Oh,
was a great connection. And I really did learn to identify more birds in our neighborhood, and in the area besides bald eagles and herons and robins and sparrows, and more than the obvious ones. So yeah, so I'm not a birder, but I do know more about birds. So.
yeah. And you're right. It's very symbolic. And I can see how it would, connect with your characters because Moses does the same thing at the urging of his friend. And so Lois is using it as a distraction. So did you have a lot of fun sort of forming this secret, correspondence between them? And yet in person together, they are fiercely opposites, opposed to one another?
Yes, yeah, I really did. And Moses's character kind of surprised me. Just how devastating it is for him when he realizes how unkind he's been to Lois.
Mm,
I
okay.
feel like some of those heroes of the 1980s and 1990s rom-coms were
Hmm.
lacking. I love the stories. The writing is amazing, all of that. But I sometimes I think, well, maybe we had, fewer expectations for our heroes back then than we do now. So it was really fun to see Moses just, really come around and all of that. So I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, that I enjoyed that.
That's a neat, that's a neat part of the story. Yeah. And I agree. I think, yeah, maybe they didn't put too much into the character development of the heroes back then, like they seem to do now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing that really lent itself to the story is just the theme of pride and prejudice. And, the Amish are humble people and really preach against pridefulness. And yet, for all of us, even if we feel like we're not prideful, we can become prideful about that, or we can be prideful about being humble. So I feel like, pride is a really, really tricky thing to avoid. And just the whole idea of preconceived, notions about other people that we hang on to so tightly, and are so unwilling sometimes to give up. So that theme, was really a lot of fun to play with too in an Amish novel.
Mm, that's important. Yeah. Well, so what made you want to write Amish?
Yeah, so I started out writing contemporary fiction. And my agent at the time was also the agent for Mindy Starnes Clark, and she was looking for a co-writer. And my agent asked me about it, and I just felt like, oh, I don't have any, expertise to write about the Amish, even though by that time I was already really fascinated by them. My husband spent part of his childhood in Pennsylvania, in a
Oh.
county adjacent to Lancaster County. And they used to go to Lancaster County, and his mom would buy old furniture that, would be antiques in Oregon. So when they
Mm.
came home, she'd bring the furniture home and things like that. And they were really fascinated by the Amish. And so in 1987, after we'd been married for 4 years, we took a trip around the United States and went to Lancaster County, and I was absolutely fascinated too. And then I started researching the Amish, and one of my favorite books was about a midwife who wrote about serving the Amish in Lancaster County. So I was definitely interested, and I have Anabaptists, back in my family history, and then our kids went to a Mennonite preschool, so I, definitely had a lot of interest in the Amish and the Mennonite. So then decided, yeah, I'll write with Mindy, and I took trips to Lancaster County and made my own contacts, and then one of my best friends left the Amish in her late 20s. So she'll brainstorm with me, and she reads all of my
Oh.
manuscripts, before they're published, which is just a huge help. That gives me a lot more confidence. And at that, I just have to say any mistakes are mine. So
Not hers,
you're
right?
right, definitely mine.
Wow.
So yeah, so it, just really felt like a lot of different things came together. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So
That's wonderful.
yeah, and I've done everything from romances to dual time stories. I've
Oh.
done a few different series that are dual time. So the series before this is about three Mennonite sisters who end up moving to Lancaster County with their to live with their grandparents. And from their great aunt, they learn about women in their family around the time of World War II. So the whole series, the question behind the series, which was something that I came across when I was researching something else, was why did the Mennonites in Germany support Hitler? So so
Oh.
that just, took me into this huge, huge research,
Wow.
just extravaganza. And so the first book, the dual time, is set in Germany pre-World War II, and then the second book, the historical thread, is set on a Mennonite farm in Lancaster County where they have German POWs. And then the
Oh.
third book, the historical thread, is post-World War II, um, during the beginning of the Red Scare. So that was just a lot of fun to see how Amish people and Mennonite people both what was going on in their lives during that time, how they were affected by what was going on in Germany, and then, the home front during World War II, and then what happened after the war. So, yeah, I really do love research. I'm just fascinated by how
Yeah,
different world events affected different
exactly.
groups.
And how
Yeah.
they connect together. We've been to Lancaster County. It's just beautiful, dreamy. I mean, you just want to disappear, right? So I can see how readers, like you said, would love to just escape, in your story.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that World War II one, whoo, that's my favorite is World War II history. So I'm definitely gonna check that out. Wow, that's amazing. Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. The first one is called A Brighter Dawn in
Okay.
that series. But
Okay.
then, after I did that series, I thought, oh, it's time for another romance. So, yeah. So the
Terrific.
shop down the lane was just a lot of fun to write. It was,
Sounds
yeah.
neat. Well, the shop down the lane releases May 6th. And can readers get a hold of you, Leslie? Do you have a
Yes.
newsletter?
I have a newsletter. Visit my website, lesliegould.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I send one out monthly, and I usually have a book giveaway every month, either one of
Mm-hmm.
my books or another author's books, an author friend's book, or books. Yeah, and then you can follow me on social media from there on Facebook and Instagram from my website too. And you can email me. So let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from readers. So.
Wonderful. And what's coming next for you?
Yeah, so the Shop Down the Lane is the first book in my Letters from Lancaster series. And then next book is When They Met Again, and it's a just friends trope. And it also, besides having the main characters, Joanna and Adam, who Adam wants to be more than friends, but Joanna's, insistent that they're just friends. But their grandmothers are all in a quilting circle together,
Oh.
and they start a circle letter to pray for their grandkids, but really it's a matchmaking
Oh. More like
endeavor.
we're back to the birds.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that
So,
sounds amazing. And
so
quilting, I'm sure you did research on quilting.
yeah, that's another thing. I've done so much research on quilting, but I don't quilt.
Yeah.
I used to sew, and I think, oh, maybe someday I'll quilt, but yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. I could just picture it in my head as you were describing it. Oh, neat. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who quilt and I'm in awe of them, but I've never
am I.
attempted it.
Yeah, I've done a little bit. I've done a little bit of piecing and yeah, I like it. It's really beautiful work, and I love how everything comes together. But it takes a lot of time.
Yes, it does. A lot of patience. So,
Mhm.
well, Leslie, it
Yeah.
sounds like you are a busy writer, and thank you for coming here to talk to us about your writing journey and your new book, The Shop Down the Lane, and all things Amish. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Ruth. Yeah, it was a delight to talk with you.
That was wonderful to talk with Leslie Gould about her new book and her writing journey and all things Amish. Wow. I always learn so much when talking to authors, but I'm always intrigued what makes an Amish author handle that, take on that genre. It's just fascinating. And so I think it's neat how she has a former Amish friend, help her out with her stories. So Leslie Gould, that was wonderful. And of course, talking about birds. But I was also encouraged by her writing journey, how she did not give up, and neither should you. This is your calling. Keep going. And use those rejections to fuel your motivation to keep going on this journey, one day at a time. I know it's hard. I've been rejected too. But if someone out there needs to read your story, then you need to keep going on this writing journey. Okay? Thanks for listening. And until next time, God bless.